Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Wealth Management Review with Daniel Krug and Associates. The title for today is Progressing Through Uncertainty. I am Daniel Krug from Daniel Krug and Associates. I am the CEO and Senior Wealth Manager at the firm. And we are a wealth management firm. And just want to put a little note out there for a disclosure. For this presentation is for informational and illustrative purposes only, and obviously is not solicitation. So if you have any questions about what you're seeing today, please give our office a call, and we would love to talk over any kind of strategies with you. Now, a little housekeeping. The duration today is going to be about 30 minutes for the actual presentation. And then we will get into questions and answers at the end. The session is recorded, so if for some reason you want to come back to it and take a look at it, we will have it up on our YouTube channel. It's Daniel Krug and Associates YouTube, and you can see all the past presentations as well as what we're recording today. So there will be an email out that will give you a link for today's presentation. Everybody is muted, so if you're talking, I'm not going to be able to hear you, so it's okay to talk while I'm doing the presentation. Use the chat room if you have any questions or if you just want to say hi. Now, there is no riddle today. Why is that? Well, because Rocky is on a short vacation with his lovely wife, and I am doing solo today. So it's just me. So we also want to thank CNR for their contribution. We couldn't do this without them. Their research is just off the charts. They have a great grasp of what's going on out there, and we rely heavily on them to make sure everything's running well. As far as the information that we can disseminate out to our clients. So for today's agenda, we got some major developments we'll go over. We'll go over the COVID-19 updates. I'm sure you've heard a little news this week. Reopening and unemployment. We'll look at the markets and investing. And then I'm going to highlight another opportunity strategy this week. And then we'll go ahead and on to the questions and answers. So again, wealth management. Our firm is a full wealth management firm. So like all other advisors, we do get into investment consulting. That's kind of one of the core items we look at with investment strategies. And in that, everybody does it, but there's only about 7%, actually less than 7%, that actually do true wealth management. So when you're looking at the true wealth management, that adds the advanced planning. So wealth enhancement strategies, wealth transfer strategies, wealth protection strategies. And like Rocky says, we got about a third of our clients that are charitably inclined. So we have specific charitable giving strategies for our clients. Again, today we're going to focus more on investment strategy and wealth enhancement. So let's go ahead and move forward. So major developments. The major developments this week really come down to a balancing act. Trying to open up the economy and stemming the tide of the COVID. So we're watching those numbers. Everybody's watching those numbers. Again, I think the media hypes things up. But they always have, right? They're always shooting for the ratings. But let's look at some real numbers, some real facts here. We have about 44 states out of 50 that are not experiencing any kind of concerning changes in the net new average hospitalizations. And keep in mind, the hospitalization is the key, right? Many people will get the flu, they'll get COVID, they'll think they have the flu even. But they'll go through the normal process, won't end up in the hospital. Hospitalization is the key here, keeping the hospitalization low, as well as obviously the death toll on it, the fatalities. And speaking of that, we can look at Tokyo, Seoul, Korea, and New York to kind of formulate a story and a strategy to see how we can actually battle this. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Consumer spending, that's increasing. It's really helping the economy. We'll look at those numbers. 3 of the last 5 days in the market have been up, although we are seeing some signs of weakening right now in the market. So we're going to keep an eye on that and see how that plays out relative to our strategies. And Treasury rates are near 0, and that's really after a 40-year decline. So we'll discuss that a little bit as well. So that's our major development. So let's go ahead and get into the COVID-19 update. So the numbers, like I said, there is a rise out there. There's a rise in cases of hospitalization, but the fatalities continue to decline. So when you're looking at this graph, the red, or the black, excuse me, is the hospitalization. The dark blue is the new cases, the 7-day average. And then the light blue is the fatalities. And as you can see, they're continuing to go down. Why is that? Because we're getting a better understanding of how to treat this disease. So it's working in the method that they thought it would initially. And again, we have to keep in perspective, what was the main focus when we started shutting things down in our country and other countries? It was to not overwhelm our hospitals, our care workers. And I believe we're actually getting to that. So that's why many people are saying we can open back up, because the hospitals aren't being overran. So we'll keep an eye on that, see how it's working. But when you're looking at the big picture of hospitalizations, this chart has 4 different categories. The dark green is the states that have a negligible hospitalization trend over the last 4 weeks. The light green, which is the majority, are states where it's actually going down. The yellow is the moderate increase, and then the rapid increases towards the end. The red, which is your Texas, Arizona, Oklahoma, and such. So what we're seeing, though, as a whole, is that these trends are overall going down. We did expect some kind of spike as we were opening up, not necessarily a big one. And you think of the United States and compare them against Europe, and I've said this before, the United States, when you're comparing what can be done, Europe is more of the model to look at, because they are governed by the EU. They have a president of the EU, and then they have multiple state countries. And each one of them can do things a little bit differently, just like our states in the United States. But one of the things that I want to point out here is that when you're looking at this graph and the different countries, what you will find is that, say for France, when France opened up, France was really the country that did it more seamlessly, from an opening to not having any kind of major research or resurge in the disease, and they're doing very well. You look at most of the other countries, though, you're finding, let's say for Spain, they started their opening up process and they had a bit of a surge, and then they started getting it under control. Same thing was happening with the UK. You know, they started opening up, they got a bit of a surge, another surge, and then they settled down. So it is not unlike us to be having the same thing happen right now. And again, we're a much bigger country, so as we open up, we're going to see more cases. So I just want to point that out, because I want to make sure that everybody's on track, that this thing is getting better, not worse. So this is a chart that Rocky had brought out really last week. And it's an interesting chart, because at the end of the day, what you're finding here is the targeted policies are actually having different, the same outcome. So what do I mean by that? Well, MIT did a paper, a study to really determine what kind of lockdowns, what kind of measures need to be taken, and what were the results of it. And they looked at it from a financial standpoint and from the mortality rate standpoint. So when you're looking at this chart, you have on the left side of the chart, you've got the total lockdown, lengthy total lockdown, and the cost of that is about $8 trillion. That's pretty expensive. You go all the way over to the right, and now you've got group distancing plus improved testing and isolation of people that have been infected. Well, that cost is about 1.5 trillion. Still a lot of money, but nowhere near the 8 trillion. Now, here's the interesting thing that came out of that study. All strategies resulted in a mortality rate of about 0.2%. So, and again, that 0.2% is against people actually catching the virus, not against the population. It's against the people who have caught the virus. So what this is telling us is, you know, if we do the group distancing and improved testing and isolating, we can have the same result, but have the economy actually open up. And that is what our current administration is pushing to. And certainly many of the governors want to get their states opened up again. So, you know, these studies are very helpful to let us know where we stand. Now, when you're talking about comparisons of mortality rates, and I think, again, I mentioned this last week in the Q&A, but I think it's worth further note that one of the things that's conspicuously absent in all of the statistics that we see is the COVID-19 mortality rate against the US population. Not sure why they're not showing that, because all other diseases are measured against population, not just against that disease. So when you start comparing the numbers, it changes the look of this disease a little bit. So COVID-19, the disease, you measure the mortality rate against the percentage of the US population, it's 0.0385. And these are numbers as of yesterday. You look at heart disease. Now, this is a number that comes around every single year. That one's a 0.1992, so closer to a 2% mortality rate. You look at lung cancer strictly from smoking. That's a fully preventable thing to have to work on, and I think it's something many people are right now. But we stop smoking, guess what? That mortality rate drops from 0.1843 from smoking to 0, right? And again, that number comes out every year. And I think last year, or 2018's number was 559,000 people died from lung cancer, smoking only. And then you look at type 2 diabetes, that's a little bit lower. It's half of, well, we call it a third of what the COVID is, and that's 0.0128. Many doctors believe that type 2 diabetes is actually preventable. Again, it's just a matter of taking the precautions and lifestyle change to prevent it. So I'm only bringing this out because I think it's a number that most people don't see. And when you start seeing it in perspective to other issues that we have, this doesn't seem to be as scary. And that's why we're trying to get this information out. We want to have logical decisions relative to opening up, not fearful decisions. My wife has been through counselor training, and one of the things she talks about is when people are in fear mode, they just cannot think logically. So we got to get the fear out of the decision making, and this is where these facts really help everybody.